check the cameras, put out some more corn and mineral salt for the deer. Guys, I have Ladybug with me today. We're trying to get her accustomed to riding and going places. As many of you know, she was abused quite bad, her and Petey, from the previous owner. And we worked with Washington County, Florida Humane Society and Animal Control to get her and Petey. So now they're part of our family here. A very loved part of our family. She hasn't been back here where we're going. Come on, lady. Come on, girl. But I'm going to be sharing some articles with you while we're up here. I want to take care of this first, and then we're going to today we're going to be doing some articles on paranormal. I know a lot of people that are here for the Sasquatch stuff only, but our family consists of a large variety of people. People who like the paranormal, people who like UFOs, people who like Sasquatch and the werewolf things, and people like me who like everything. So I'm gonna check these two cameras and put the corn out. We're gonna be going back. Oh, I'm going that way to do the corn. Hey, Ladybug. Here, and you pull the chain off. Let's see. Let's get this big chain, okay? You see, watch your ears. There we go. You don't need this one here. You don't need it here. Come on. Come on, pretty girl. We got, our deer have vanished from here. What it is, the guy who owns the property on our east and south side. There's 50 acres that surround us. He's allowed, he's got the property for sale. There's nothing on it as far as improvements. There's no well, no power pole. I'm not sure what dug there. It's just raw land, but you guys see the condition the trees are in. That's mostly pines over there, and 90% of them are trashed. So, golly, there it goes. Can't believe this thing still has battery in it. Ain't got much. 50% maybe. Okay. Excuse me. I'm probably going to take this camera out. This is the card reader that I use. It's got a USB plug for the computer. It's got a Type-C, a micro USB, and the lightning connector. It's been a really good card reader. Okay. Let's see if we got anything on it since this past week. I got a few pictures. Select all, upload, or save. So we got 11 pictures on it. Let's delete them, confirm. Back. Unplug it, close that out. Okay, let's see. what we got on it, if there's anything, any count. There's nothing. Nothing. This was the rain. Wind blowing. Got a blue jay. Oh, my phone screen is nasty. Got a bird in mid-flight right there. I don't know if you can see that. Nothing on it. Okay. All right, we got nothing on this one. Okay. Looks like deer tracks. Let me double check. This battery's probably too dead. Oh, nope. Look at all the corn out here. Nothing's eating it. We got deer tracks, but for some reason the camera's not picking them up. The deer come in here. You can see the tracks right there. I don't know if you can make them out. It's a very odd track. I don't know what that is. It almost looks like a pig. But I'm gonna let this run out. Ain't got a lot of feed left. Battery is about gone. God, this is where the deer normally come. There's tracks down. So the camera's not picking them up. Battery's too weak. That's an easy fix. I'm gonna take it out with me. I don't have the batteries. We are going to. There we go. We're going to be back in the woods, filming, hiking, and all that good stuff after hunting season closes, which is this next Sunday. Is the last day for the areas where we hunt. Oh, man, poked me in the eye 3 times. So those areas are state land. Private land has another week for a lease. We could hunt one more week on it, but we're not going to. Okay, Ladybug, come. Gonna let you guys know all that footage I've been fighting with trying to get videos edited, and I finally figured out what's going on. I'm not I'm not a computer guy at all. And apparently you have to download a codec, free codec, or I don't remember what they call it. But if you take footage that is like filming in 1080p, 30 frames per second, excuse me, you can edit that. You can do whatever you need to do with it. I film 1080p, 24 frames per second, because a lot of my footage is hunting footage that I do this time of the year. And you deer come in early morning, late afternoon, and you need low light settings, which the slower frame rate does help with being able to record better in low light. Well, the computer, if it's anything besides 30 frames per second, if it's 60 or 24, any of the other varying frame rates, it cannot process it without that. I think it's called a codec, C-O-D-E-C. But I downloaded an editor. I play the video straight from my camera into the computer. I cannot see the video part, but I can hear the audio file. The audio is good and crisp, but there is no video. But using this editor that I downloaded, you can watch them. You can put them together and make a video. But anyhow, I got it figured out. Okay. Now I'm getting deer on this camera. Oh, it's going to get heavy. This is my feeding area right here. So we're going to check this camera. This is one that Kim got me. I really like it. This is my best camera. I think it's turned off. Shouldn't be. In the world. Blood just dripped on me. I don't think it was blood. I think it was something else that comes out of the backside of a bird. Okay. I don't think I've got anything on it. It appears this camera was off. That stinks. I turned it on. Unless the battery's getting weak. No pictures in that, no pictures. Oh, did I burn it? Well, that didn't work. I distinctly remember turning this one on, but it definitely was not on. Let's see what the battery is in it. It's got a full battery. And it's on right now. This corn here, I'm not going to spread it as much as I normally do because it's got a lot of mineral salt in it. What are you doing there, Mrs. Bug? Mrs. Ladybug? Got one more, girl. One more, okay? Oh. It makes the heavens. Mineral salt is. salt, girl. Don't eat the salt. Are you eating the corn? It's a laxative. You don't need that. Alright, guys. Oh, to let you know, I'm sure I'm gonna get some of them weird responses. A video with nothing in it. I'm not out trying to film anything. I just film everything all the time. You guys just don't see but a small portion of what I actually film. But what you're watching right now, today, 11:30 this morning, UPS arrived and I got my camera back. It's the GoPro 9, the one that messed up on me. So it was I guess a factory defect, but anyhow, they replaced it, sent me a brand new one. And this is one my brother sent me. And I absolutely love it. The GoPro 8, Brother Jeff, he gave me 1 year, and I film with it. I film with that one and the 9 constantly. I use both of them. But right now, I'm just going to use this one. I just want to make sure everything's working right. And we get up here, going to get set up and get the tripod out. And I'm going to share some articles with you on hauntings, the possessions. So just bear with me. We will be set up here in a flash. You ready, girl? I got my trusty sidekick. Are you hot? I got some water for you in the car. We'll go get some. Well, let's do it. This is titled Haunting and Possession in Gary, Indiana. The year was December of 2012. The location is Caroline Street in Gary, Indiana. And the information source is eyewitness testimony from the tenants, police, social service workers, religious clergy, and a clairvoyant. The preface. In this case, an entire family was driven from their home by a host of spirit entities, forcing them to enlist the help of the church and the police in an attempt to save their children. The social worker investigation begins. The interview with the children had already taken several hours, and as evening approached, Valerie Washington found herself longing for the end of her working day. She had been asked that afternoon by her supervisor at the Department of Children's Services to go across town to the hospital in Gary and assist in the staff there in assessing a family which had been brought in. With the children's mother and grandmother seated next door in a separate room, she and one of the nurses had spent most of the day questioning the 3 siblings in an effort to find out why the police had removed them from their home. And while the interviews with the family's 12-year-old daughter had gone well for the most part, sadly, the same could not be said for her 2 brothers. The younger of the pair, who was 7 years old, had a tendency to growl and bare his teeth when asked questions. He would roll his eyes right back in his head until only the whites showed, announcing that it would soon be time for those who were present in the room to die. His older brother was less aggressive, but had largely remained silent when questioned, simply staring back at the caseworker with a disconcerting smile. Realizing that she was making little headway, Washington was about to end the interview when the younger boy had launched himself across the table at his 9-year-old brother. Calling for the children's grandmother to assist, Washington watched on wearily as the older boy then began to headbutt the old woman in the chest, provoking her to take him by the hand and commence praying out loud. Suddenly the boy went completely stiff, his head rotating slowly to fix upon the two healthcare workers with a dead-eye stare. He then began walk backwards. Washington's jaw suddenly dropped open in disbelief as the child reached the wall behind him and then continued to walk backwards up it. He was still staring at her, sporting that terrifying grin as he stepped off the wall, his feet now standing flat against the ceiling before he dropped down again. With a frightened cry, Washington grabbed her notes and ran from the room, with the male nurse following closely behind her. As the waiting police officers jumped up to see what was going on, she ordered them to take the children into protective custody and then shakily began to phone her supervisor. The first signs the house was haunted. The first signs for Latoya Ammons that something might have been amiss with the one-story house on Caroline Street, where she had just relocated her family, were the flies. The weather in Gary, Indiana in that December of 2012 had been characteristically cold, and yet after less than a week at the address, she found that the porch area and screen door were somehow permanently carpeted in a thick layer of grossly distended black flies. No matter how many times she tried to kill or remove the dead insects, they quickly returned, causing her to call the landlord and ask for assistance. For his part, he seemed as surprised by the issue as she did, saying that he would get someone to come around and look into the problem. He also stated that nothing like this had ever been reported by any of the previous tenants. Several nights later, Latoya had been sitting in the living room with her mother, Rosa Campbell, when both women had been startled by the sound of loud footsteps apparently ascending the stairs from the basement below them. Thinking that this could potentially be one of her sons playing a prank, Latoya had gone across to the cellar door and opened it, only to find nobody there. Bewildered, she switched the basement lights on before suddenly recoiling in horror. There, on the wooden steps, illuminated by the solitary light bulb shining down from overhead, were a large set of glistening boot prints. Latoya had quickly locked the cellar door and then checked every room in the house to ensure that there were no signs of a break-in. All three children were still fast asleep in their beds, with the windows and doors to the address apparently locked and secure. After several minutes, when she went back to check the stairs, the mysterious boot prints had now seemingly faded away. A few days later, officers from the Gary Police Department were called to the address, following a frantic 911 call from Latoya. When they arrived, they found the tenant hysterical, seated in the living room of the house with her three children hugged close, eyes darting frantically about the room. Latoya explained to the officers that she had risen in the early hours to get a drink from the kitchen, only to encounter a dark figure standing in her path in the living room. She had cried out in fear as the shadowy figure had lunged towards her, only for it to fade into nothingness as it made contact with her. Consumed by a freezing sensation and a sudden urge to vomit, she had briefly collapsed to the ground before regaining her senses and managing to call the police. Despite their best efforts, the police officers could find no trace of an intruder, either inside the address or its surroundings, and advised the mother of three to try and get a good night's rest. But as terrifying as these encounters were, they were only the start of a horrific ordeal that was yet to come. Further terrifying encounters. 2 weeks later, on the evening of March 10th, 2012, the police were again called to Caroline Street. Once more, Latoya was hugging her children close to her, tears streaming down her face. The officers listened impassively as the children's grandmother explained that both she and her daughter had been awakened by panic yells had been awakened by panicked yells coming from her granddaughter's room. Hurrying through the house, they had found the 12-year-old girl levitating several feet above her bed, apparently fast asleep. It had been her brothers who were screaming in distress. Unable to rouse the floating child, Rosa Campbell had immediately ordered the others to join her in prayer, at which point the girl had descended to the bed. She awoke with no apparent memory of the event. The churches are contacted. It would transpire that the local churches, which the grandmother had contacted in the aftermath of this incident, were as skeptical as the police officers who had attended. A local clairvoyant gives advice. With the religious community refusing to help, the family instead turned to a local clairvoyant who stated that she could feel the presence of multiple evil spirits inside the house, advising the terrified tenants to vacate the residence immediately. Lacking the finances for such a move, Latoya instead attempted to cleanse the house herself. She erected a simple altar in the basement, made the sign of the cross in oil on the children's foreheads, and read a psalm out loud. The situation quickly deteriorated. Latoya and her mother later discovered her 7-year-old hiding inside one of the closets, apparently talking to an invisible child. The boy explained that he was conversing with the spirit of a dead boy who was describing to him how it felt to die. Almost immediately, both he and his brother seemed to become repeatedly possessed by evil entities. They would growl like dogs, laugh maniacally, and speak to her in strange voices which were not their own. A neighbor contacts social services. Following an incident where an item of furniture apparently levitated by itself and then flew across the room, injuring her daughter, the Department of Children's Services were contacted by a neighbor who had concerns for the safety of the children. It was while Latoya and the rest of the family were at the hospital seeking treatment that a caseworker attended to interview them. The meeting did not go well, and when her eldest son apparently became possessed and walked backwards up a wall and onto the ceiling, her children were taken into care. Police Captain Charles Austin gets involved. Desperate to get them back, Latoya made repeated appeals to anyone she could think of, including religious leaders and a local police captain named Charles Austin. Having worked in law enforcement for around 30 years prior to this case, Austin was initially skeptical of the account given by the hysterical mother. A visit to the family physician, Dr. Jeffrey Onyeokwu, would do little to persuade him of her claims. On speaking with the doctor, he was informed that, in all likelihood, the children were acting out delusions suggested to them by their mother's deeply religious beliefs. But the accounts of the social worker and the nurse from the incident at the hospital concerned him. Both witnesses were trained professionals, completely terrified by what had taken place there. Accompanied by another officer, along with social worker Valerie Washington, he decided to pay a visit to the family home on Caroline Street. Despite his many years on the force, Austin found himself completely unnerved by the encounter. The video recorder they were using repeatedly failed while in use. The batteries apparently sucked dry by some unknown force. While reviewing the photos they had taken at the premises, the outlines of shadowy figures could be seen standing watching the officers, which were also present on images he had taken using his personal mobile phone. When he later went to review the audio notes he had recorded, Austin heard a mysterious voice talking in the background, which had not been heard at the time of the recording. He would later experience electrical issues at his home address, with devices shorting out or failing when he touched them. Reverend Michael Magano, 3 exorcisms and evacuation of the house. Another individual who agreed to help the family was Reverend Michael Magano, who had been contacted by the chaplain from the Methodist hospital. When he spoke to LaToya, she pleaded with him to conduct an exorcism at the house. Agreeing to a preliminary visit to the house, he found that lights flickered when he went near them, and the window blinds would move around despite the windows being securely fastened. He would go on to conduct 3 separate exorcisms at the residence, 2 in English and 1 in Latin, none of which passed without incident. During one of these visits, a strange oil began to ooze out of the fixtures, dripping onto the floor below. Even after officers cleaned this up and checked that these fittings had not been filled up with oil by LaToya, more of the fluid began to drip from inside. In another incident, a social worker named Samantha Illick, who had taken over the family's case when Washington requested to be removed, suffered an adverse reaction. As with the officers on the previous visit, she discovered a strange fluid oozing out of the wall in the basement. When she ran her finger through it, it was freezing cold and highly viscous. Suddenly, the strange gel seemed to change its chemical makeup, hardening and quickly solidifying. A sharp pain then shot through her finger as it had been snapped or broken. Samantha was instantly paralyzed as her entire body was then engulfed in a similar agony. Unable to speak or breathe properly, she fled the house and refused to go back inside. Finally, after the 3rd exorcism, whatever was taking place inside the house seemed to cease. LaToya was reunited with her children, moving out of the house shortly afterwards. The aftermath. The highly public way in which LaToya Ammons has described the events which took place in Gary, Indiana, have opened her up to accusations of manipulation and sensationalism. She has given multiple interviews about the alleged ordeal which she and her family went through, with some commentators accusing her of fabricating accounts in order to profit from them. It is true, LaToya was in financial difficulty at the time she reported the disturbances and was several months behind with her rent payments to her landlord. There is further criticism, too, in the written assessments of the children which were carried out by state psychologists. Most were of the opinion that the boys in particular were attempting to please their mother by acting out her fantasies to the authorities. And yet, many of the professionals who were involved with the family and who had worked on their case simply cannot explain some of the things they saw and heard during that time. Some are veterans in their field, highly respected and upstanding in the local community, with absolutely no reason to embellish or lie about what they encountered. There is also the issue that LaToya has given the press direct access to her medical records and those of her children in order to verify and support aspects of her account. If she were to be fabricating what transpired, surely there is something she would have sought to hide in order to assist her narrative. With no further incidents of the supernatural having been reported by either the family or any of the subsequent tenants of their old house, it seems that whatever forces targeted LaToya and her children have long since moved on. Did an evil entity fixate on this mother and her young family in an attempt to claim their souls? Or was this a case of a mother affecting the mental health of her children through fantasy and indoctrination? In truth, we cannot be sure, but what we do know is that this case possesses a wide and diverse range of evidence, far in excess of most others, and for that reason this should be looked at as a cautionary tale of the potential threats at the fringes of our reality. Did the house already contain evil entities prior to LaToya's moving in, which led to these evil entities picking the ones who could easily be possessed? Did the 3 exorcisms successfully rid the house of these evil entities? Were there no evil entities at all in this house, as seems to have been the case with the previous and future tenants, and it was one of LaToya's family members that drew these entities in? The family member acting as a medium, knowingly or unknowingly? Some of these questions may never be answered, but are thought-provoking indeed. Also called the Caroline Street Demon House, it was claimed to be haunted by more than 200 evil spirits. A photo taken by the Hammond Police Department after the house was unoccupied shows a spirit figure in the front porch window. The house was bulldozed in February of 2016. I'm going to attempt to show you guys some of these pictures. I know most of us are familiar with this case, but it's still very interesting nonetheless. This is the house on Caroline Street in Gary, Indiana, before demolition in 2016. I'm sure you guys can read it, but for those that are watching on a phone or a small device that can't, trying to get to the next page here. I'm outside, outdoors in the woods, trying to do this. And the wind's blowing. I'll get it in a minute. There we go. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, wow. Photo of the haunted house with a spirit figure in the porch window taken by the Hammond, Indiana Police Department when the house was unoccupied and prior to demolition in 2016. I don't know if you guys can see the figure. It's right there. That is creepy. That is so creepy. Well, guys, that's it. Pictures with this one. I'm going to get loaded up and take my ladybug, and we're going to head home. Malachi he's doing a little bit better, for those who were curious and are kind of following us on that. We're still dealing with Malachi's body temperature keeps dropping dangerously low. It got to 95 this morning, and we have a propane heater in there. We moved him into our laundry room, but we're leaving the door open where he can come and go as he pleases. And he's fenced by himself in a small area, just in case what he has is contagious, the others don't get it. He's had a rough life. He was a rescue, but we're going to do whatever's necessary to save him. We're trying to figure something out on getting him hospitalized. The vet that we use is the only vet in our area that works on farm animals, livestock. Goats are considered livestock, and we have no other choice here. We have a mobile vet that's a couple hours away that we've used a few times, but she is not set up for hospitalization, and in order to give him an IV, to do an IV drip, he has to be hospitalized where they can secure him so he doesn't pull the IV out. He's got to be in a very controlled environment for that. And we're doing what we can, but we'll keep you guys updated on him. You know, Malachi's part of our family. We love him to death, and it's the path the Lord put us on. And we'll do whatever's necessary to make sure he gets the treatment he needs and he survives this mess. He's had a rough life, and he's been through a lot of trauma, even as a baby. But he's beat it all, and we're just going to continue to pray for him and ask that you guys do the same. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I know this wasn't a very clean read. I'm in the wind, I'm outdoors, I have no table or anything here. All I got is a tripod for the camera and a notebook. But we're gonna head home. Thank you guys again. God bless you. I love you. I'll definitely be seeing you all soon. I'm gonna get my girl here, and we are going to head to the house because I'm sure that she is ready to go. There's Ladybug. You ready, girl? You wanna go home? It's time to go, ain't it? Y'all have a good day. God bless you. Bye-bye.